We continue now at the top of Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph and Meseches Zevachim. This is Zevachim Daf 37a. On the previous Amud, the Mishnah said that when it comes to the applications of the blood of the karbonos on the Mizbeach HaChitzon, really just with one application of blood, kiper, that is enough to achieve an atonement. And the Gemara asked, where's the source for that? And the Gemara said the source is from the pasuk V'dam Zevachecha Yishafech. And so the Gemara now is asking, is that really what the pasuk of V'dam Zevachecha Yishafech is for? But isn't it for the following? The Brisa says, Minayin l'chol hadamim, from where do we know that all of the bloods, sheteunim matan dam liyasod, that if they require applications of the blood, that blood goes to the yesod of the Mizbeach, the foundation of the Mizbeach. We'll see Rashi in a moment. Talmud Lomer V'dam Zevachecha Yishafech. The pasuk says V'dam Zevachecha Yishafech. So the problem is we're already using V'dam Zevachecha Yishafech for this halacha of Matan Dam Liyasod. So how can we also use it for the concept of the Mishnah that you just need to have one application of blood on the Mizbeach HaChitzon? And so the Gemara continues and says, Nafkole midarebi, our Mishnah will learn out this halach of Matan Dam Liyasod from a different source, from what Rebbe said, the Tanya, because we learned in a Brisa, Rebbe Yomer, Rebbe said, V'hanishar badam yimotze, it says whatever's remaining in the blood will be squeezed. She'ein Talmud Lomer badam, the pasuk doesn't need to say badam. Umat Talmud Lomer badam, why does it say badam? Lefi shelo lamadnu ela linitanin matan dalid, because we only learned that those where you have 4 applications of blood, sheteunin matan damim liyasod, that then you have to put the blood to the yesod of the Mizbeach. Sha'ar damim minayin, how do we know this applies to other bloods as well? Talmud Lomer, the pasuk says, V'hanishar badam yimotze, again it says in the pasuk that what remains in the blood is going to be squeezed. She'ein Talmud Lomer badam, the pasuk doesn't need to say badam. Umat Talmud Lomer badam, why does it say the word badam? Limeid al kol hadamim, it teaches about all bloods, sheteunin matan damim liyasod, that they require the application of the blood to the yesod of the Mizbeach. And Rashi explains, Minayin shekol hadamim shel kol hakarbonos. How do we know that all of the bloods of all karbonos, sheteunim matan dam liyasod, that they require application of the blood to the yesod of the Mizbeach? Now, what does that mean? It means as follows: Im nishar min hadam bekli. Let's say you have remaining blood in the vessel. La'achar shezorak shtei matanos. After he already threw his 2 applications of the blood, he did the zrikas hadam. He now has leftover blood in the vessel. So shetzarich l'shovcho liyasod. He has to pour that out in the yesod at the base of the Mizbeach. That's what it means, matan dam liyasod. It means you pour out the remaining blood to the yesod of the Mizbeach. Now, even though it only says this in the pasuk about shvichas shirayim, pouring out the remainder of the blood, it only says that by the carbon chatas. How do we know that that applies by all karbonos? And so again, the Gemara brought in the first brisa that we learned that from the V'dam Zevachecha Yishafech, and that's a problem because we already learned V'dam Zevachecha Yishafech. We already used that pasuk for the teaching in our Mishnah, and so therefore the Gemara says really it comes from a different source according to the Tana of our Mishnah. It comes to the source that Rebbe has, and again Rebbe brings the pasuk of V'hanishar badam. It says in the pasuk V'hanishar badam yimotze bechatos ha'of ksiv. Now this pasuk is written by the bird chatos. V'hanishar yimotze havalei l'michtav. The word badam is extra. Could have just said Vanishar Yimotze. Umat Talmud Lomer badam. Why does it say badam? Ela al hanitanin matan arba. We only know about karbonos that require 4 applications. What karbonos require 4 applications? Hainu chatos. That refers to the carbon chatos. Shatuna arba matanos al arba karnos. There's a requirement by chatos that you apply the blood 4 times to the 4 corners of the Mizbeach. Uvechatos ksivi shirayim l'shvicha. By the chatos it says this idea of pouring the remainder to the base of the Mizbeach. So limed al kol adam, and this pasuk teaches that's true by all the bloods. Shenishar b'hen klum, anytime there's blood remaining, la'achar ikr zrikas, and after the main zrika is done, sheyishafech hanishar liyasod, that again the rest should be poured to the yesod of the Mizbeach. But the Gemara continues and asks, V'akati, but still, Lahachi Uda'asa is the pasuk of V'dam Zevachecha Yishafech used for the halach in our Mishnah, but Miboy Le'lechidatanya isn't it needed for what we learn in the following Brisa? The Brisa says, Minayin L'nitanin Bizrika Shenesanan B'shvicha Yatsa. From where do we know? Let's say you're supposed to be throwing the blood, that's usually done from a distance, but let's say instead you pour the blood. How do we know that that is a fulfillment of the requirement? Talmud Lomer, the pasuk says, V'dam Zevachecha Yishafech. We learn that out from the pasuk of V'dam Zevachecha Yishafech. So So again, we need the pasuk to teach us this halacha, not the halacha in our Mishnah. Rashi explains, Minayin l'nitanin bizrika kol hadamim shakasa behen zrika. It means all the bloods where the pasuk uses the word zrika to throw the blood, kigon ola ushlamim v'yasham, like by carbon ola, shlamim and asham, dechsibhu v'zarku, it says the word v'zarku, uvechor dechsiv bei v'yas damam tizrok, by v'chor also it says tizrok, v'chol zrika mei rachok mashma. The word zrika is understood as being from a distance, shazorek minakli, lemizbeach lemei rachik, you throw from the vessel to the mizbeach, which is a distance away. And shvicha means omed eitzel hayesod v'shofech. Shvicha means you're standing by the yesod of the mizbeach and pouring. So v'dam zvachecha yishafech, again we learned that from the v'dam zvachecha yishafech, and kol zvachim b'mashma, we understand that to mean all karbonos. And the Gemara continues and answers, Savar lo Rabbi Akiva, our Mishnah holds like Rabbi Akiva. The Amar that Rabbi Akiva says, Lo zrika bechlal shvicha, velo shvicha bechlal zrika, that zrika is not included in shvicha, and shvicha is not included in zrika. In other words, shvicha is not a way to fulfill the obligation of zrika, and so therefore you're not going to use the pasuk for that halacha because it's not even true. If you have a situation where zrika was supposed to be done, shvicha would not be sufficient. And the Gemara says, now where do we know that Rabbi Akiva says this? Tetnan, because we learned in a Mishnah, this is a Mishnah in Meseches Psachim, Beirach birchas haPesach, if he makes the bracha, this is a bracha that was made on the carbon Pesach, so pater es shel zevach, so then he also exempts the bracha. You don't need to make a bracha anymore on the carbon chagiga. The bracha on the carbon Pesach is good for the carbon chagiga. However, let's say the reverse, shel zevach, let's say he made the bracha on the chagiga, lo pater es haPesach, that does not exempt the carbon Pesach. Divrei Rabbi Yishmael, that's what Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Akiva says, lo zu poter zu, velo zu poter zu. It's not true either direction. This bracha is not, it doesn't exempt this one, and that bracha doesn't exempt this one, meaning to say, one bracha is not good for the other, and as we'll see Rashi in a moment, this is related to the issue of zrika bechlal shvicha. Essentially, Rabbi Akiva is saying, lo zrika bechlal shvicha, velo shvicha bechlal zrika. Rashi explains, Beirach birchas haPesach pater es shel zevach, if he makes the bracha on the carbon Pesach, that exempts a bracha on the zevach, on the chagiga. That's again what Rabbi Yishmael says. And Rashi explains, Chagiga Sar Ba'asar, this is talking about the carbon Chagiga that's brought on the 14th, Sheba Im HaPesach, that comes together with the carbon Pesach, that's the 14th of Nisan. And when do you bring a Chagiga Sar Ba'asar? That's Kesha Chabura Meruba, that's if you have a very large group, so you need another animal, you bring this carbon Chagiga as well. V'shanino b'tosefta de Psachim, and we learn in the Tosefta Psachim, Ala Pesach, Hu Omer Baruch Asher Kedeshanu B'mitzvosav V'tzivanu Lechol HaPesach, that's the bracha you make on the carbon Pesach. V'ala Zevach, now the bracha on the zevach, which is the chagiga, the bracha is Asher Kedeshanu Mitzvosav V'tzivanu Lechol Es HaZevach. V'imbeirach Al HaPesach Patras HaZevach. And so Rabbi Yishmael is saying, when you make a bracha on the carbon Pesach, that exempts the zevach, that exempts the chagiga. Al HaZevach Lo Patras HaPesach. The other way is not true. You make the bracha on the zevach, it does not exempt the Pesach. V'kasal Gadaydach, and initially we think, Uv'psachim Nami Hachi Mefarish. By Psachim also we explain as follows. To Kasavar Rabbi Yishmael, that Rabbi Yishmael holds Zrika Bechlal Shvicha. We understand that Rabbi Yishmael holds that Zrika is included in Shvicha. Kedo Amar La'el, like we said earlier. Minayin l'nitanin b'Zrika hanitanin b'Shvicha yatsa. How do we know that if it's supposed to be Zrika but you do Shvicha, that's good? And Hilkach, therefore, since that is true, that the Shvicha would be good in a situation where you need to do Zrika, so therefore Matan Dam Shlamim. So when it comes to the application of the blood of Shlamim, Shekasav ba Zrika, there it actually is written the word Zrika. Bechlal Matan Dam Pesach, that's included in the application of the blood of carbon Pesach, Shakasa ba Shvicha. By carbon Pesach it says Shvicha. In other words, the idea is that since by carbon Pesach it says Shvicha, and we say that when you do Shvicha, that can count for a Zrika as well, which is again what we're saying, that Shvicha counts as a Zrika. So therefore, if you say the bracha on the Pesach, and Pesach it says Shvicha, that's going to be effective for the Zevach as well. Like we'll say later on, so if he makes the bracha on the carbon Pesach, Potter is HaZevach, he then exempts the Zevach, Zevach Bechlal Pesach, because the Zevach can be said to be included in the Pesach. Avol Birach al HaZevach, well, let's say he makes a bracha on the Zevach, on the Chagiga, Lo Potter is HaPesach, that's not going to exempt the Pesach. Shalom Motzino L'nitanin B'Shvicha, because we don't find where it's supposed to be applied through pouring, Sheksherin B'Zrika, that now Zrika is okay, that we don't find. Hilkach ein Pesach Bechlal Shlamim, therefore the Pesach is not included in the shlamim. And Rashi continues, Rabbi Akiva says, Ein zu poteres zu, this one does not exempt that one. The less leilinitan bizrika shenesanan b'shvicha yatsa, because Rabbi Akiva does not hold that if it was supposed to be applied with zrika and then it's applied with shvicha, that the person is yotze. Dehad de pesach b'shvicha, because the fact that Korban Pesach is even with shvicha is by pouring. Mi v'dam zvachecha yishafech nafkul on the kamon. That we're going to learn from v'dam zvachecha yishafech later on, and so therefore that pasuk is not available to teach us that nitanin bizrika shenesanan b'shvicha is yatsa. V'tarti lo darashtem mineh. You can't learn two things from one pasuk. Ulekamon parach, and the Gemara later will ask, well, what about according to Rabbi Yishmael? How is he able to learn both of those things? Rabbi Yishmael hechi darash delay lahachi ulahachi. How can Rabbi Yishmael use it to darshan both this and that? V'tana de brisa kamaisa. Now the Tana of the first brisa, who uses v'dam zvachecha yishafech for the halach in our Mishnah, savar lak Rabbi Akiva b'ha de'ein zrika b'chlal shvicha. He holds like Rabbi Akiva in the idea that zrika is not included in shvicha. Avol b'pesach, and when it comes to Korban Pesach, b'shvicha lo svir leikavasa. He doesn't hold that Korban Pesach is b'shvicha. He doesn't hold like Rabbi Akiva in that. The holo miyaser leikra, because he doesn't have that extra pasuk to mi boy le l'chol hanitanim b'mizbeach achitzon shenesan b'matana achas keeper, because again he needs the pasuk for the halach in our Mishnah that matana achas, that one application of blood is enough for an atonement. And this is what we are going to say in the sugya. But the Gemara continues and asks, Akati, still, lohachi udas, is this what the pasuk is used for? Again, the pasuk of Adam zvochecha yishafech. But mi boile lechidatanya, don't we need it for what's taught in the following brisa? Rabbi Yishmael says, mitoch shenemar, ach bechor shor, or bechor kesev, or bechor eiz. It talks about bechor, lamadnu lebechor, sheton matan domim veimurim, legami mizbeach. That pasuk teaches us that bechor, firstborn animals, you need to have an application of blood, and you have to put the sacrificial portions, burn them on the mizbeach. But Meiser or Pesach Minayin, how do we know that there's Matan Domim and a Murim Lagavi Mizbeach by Meiser Behema? How do we know it by Korban Pesach? Talmud Lomer V'dam Zvochecha Yishafech. That we learn from V'dam Zvochecha Yishafech. And so you see we're using this pasuk for this halacha, the halacha again of Matan Domim and a Murim when it comes to Meiser Behema, when it comes to Korban Pesach. And to that the Gemara says, Savar Lok Rabbi Yossi HaGlili. Our Tana will hold like Rabbi Yossi HaGlili. We have a different source for this halacha. The Tanya, because we learned in a brayso, Rabbi Yossi HaGlili Rabbi Yossi HaGlili says, Damo lo nemar. It doesn't say damo in singular, its blood. Elo domam. It says their blood in plural. And chelbo lo nemar. It doesn't say its fat. Elo chelbam. It says their fat in plural. Limed al bechor meiser or Pesach. That teaches about bechor, meiser, and Pesach. Shaton matan dam and veimurim legavi mizbeach. That you need the application of the blood, and you need to burn the emurim on the mizbeach. And we will take a look at the full pasuk over here. The full pasuk is by Bechor, Ach Bechor Shor, or Bechor Kesev, or Bechor Eiz, Lo Sifte Kodesh Heim, as Domam Tizrok Alam Mizbeach. Again, it says the word Domam in plural. V'as Chelbam Taktir. So again, you throw the blood on the Mizbeach, you burn Chelbam, you burn the sacrificial portions. And from the plural, we learn out that this is a halacha, not only by Bechor, but by Meiser and Pesach as well. And the Gemara continues and asks for Rabbi Yishmael, according to Rabbi Yishmael, Haikra, this pasuk of V'dam Zvachecha Yishafech, Mapik Leilahachi, uses it for this, and he uses it for that. How is it possible that Rabbi Yishmael uses that pasuk for two halachas? And the Gemara answers to that, Shrei Tanoi, I'll leave it to Rabbi Yishmael. There's two Tanoim. Within Rabbi Yishmael, there's a Machlokas Tanoim, what exactly Rabbi Yishmael holds. Rashi explains, Rabbi Yishmael, Haikra, V'dam Zvachecha Yishafech. Rabbi Yishmael, this pasuk of V'dam Zvachecha Yishafech, Mapik Leilahachi, he uses it for two things. Bitmiya, this is a question. Dorish leilin nitanin bizrika shenesanan b'shvicha. First, he has to use the pasuk for nitanin bizrika nesanan b'shvicha, meaning if the blood was supposed to be applied by throwing it, then shvicha would still be good. That Rabbi Yishmael has to be holding. The al karchach Rabbi Akiva lo asya, because that halacha cannot be following Rabbi Akiva. That's impossible. The imkein amayin pesach potras hazevach, because if that was true, if we held that shvicha is going to be sufficient for cases where you're supposed to do zrika, so why wouldn't the bracha on Korban Pesach exempt the Korban Chagiga? Ha'olu shlamim bechlal Pesach, since shlamim is included in Pesach. V'inami svir le Rabbi Akiva Pesach bezrika, and even if Rabbi Akiva had held that Pesach is bezrika, Rabbi Yossi HaGlili, like Rabbi Yossi HaGlili, that you don't do shvicha by Pesach, then kol shekein d'shneim potrin zeh, then certainly you should say that they both exempt one another. V'kadarish leisu le Pesach dev'shvicha, and again the second drasha from V'dam Zvachecha Yishafech is that Korban Pesach is b'shvicha, that you pour the blood blood, you don't throw the blood by Karban Pesach, and so that's the question in Rabbi Yishmael. How does he learn both of these halachas from V'dam Zevachim Yishafech? And the Gemara answered, Shrei Tanoi, I'll leave it to Rabbi Yishmael. There's a machlokas Tanoim, actually what Rabbi Yishmael held. Demand Yolif Leila Pesach B'Shvicha, the one who says that you use the pasuk for Pesach, that the way you do Karban Pesach is to pour the blood, Lesle Pesach Poter Es HaZevach. That Tana does not hold that Karban Pesach is able to exempt the Zevach, it's able to exempt the Karban Chagiga. V'lo Polig Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva B'Hai, there won't be a machlokas Rabbi Yishmael against Rabbi Akiva in this regard. Kevan de Pesach B'Shvicha Mehai Kro Yolif, because since we're learning from this pasuk that Pesach is B'Shvicha, so less lon l'meilaf mina, we can't learn an additional halacha from there that nitanin b'zrika ksherim b'shvicha, that if zrika is supposed to be done, that shvicha is good. So we wouldn't learn that halacha as well. You wouldn't learn them both. Uman de islay plugsa, and the one who holds that there is a machlokas between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva, leslay Pesach b'shvicha. He doesn't hold that Pesach is b'shvicha. Ela b'zrika kishlavim. If there's a machlokas between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Yishmael actually will hold that they both use zrika. Now, if that's the case, why is it that there's a distinction? Why don't we say that they both exempt each other? Umiyu Pesach Ikar v'Zevach Tafel Lo. According to this approach, you'll say the reason why Rabbi Yishmael makes a distinction and says the bracha on Pesach exempts the Zevach, but not vice versa, is because Pesach is the Ikar and the Zevach is the Tafel. Hilkach ein Zevach poter lePesach. Therefore, the Zevach doesn't exempt the Karban Pesach. Aval Pesach poter as Zevach, but the Pesach does exempt the Zevach. Uv'Psachim Yerushalmi Haytayim Amar Ba. This reasoning is given in the Yerushalmi and Psachim. And the Gemara continues and asks, B'Shalom al Rabbi Yishmael, it works out according to Rabbi Yishmael, Demukim lo kulei bebechor, because again Rabbi Yishmael says this entire pasuk, this is the pasuk of Ach bechor shor or O bechor kesev, it's all really talking about bechor. Again, Rabbi Yishmael holds that from that pasuk we learn that bechor requires matan domim and emurim on the mizbeach, and he learns that Meiser and Pesach are learned from V'dam Zevachim Yishafech. So if he's learning this whole pasuk is talking about bechor, the plurals in this pasuk, like when it says as damah, and when it says v'es chelbam, that's just talking about the bechors of various kinds of animals. So according to Rabbi Yishmael, demukim lakule bebechor, he says that whole pasuk is bechor. Hainu dechsiv uvesaram yelach. Then it also says plural. Their meats shall be to you. The kohanim get the meat from the bechor, and it's plural because the whole pasuk is plural. It's talking about the various animals that are bechor. Elul Rabbi Yossi, but according to Rabbi Yossi, demukim lei nami b'maisru pesach. He says again that this pasuk, the plural, is referring to meiser beheman. It's referring to Karban Pesach. That's what the plural in the pasuk is referring to. So if that is the case, so then Meiser Pesach Bailamachlile, that doesn't make sense with the word Uvesaram. In other words, according to Rabbi Yossi Haglili, that Damam and Chelbam, that talks about Meiser and Pesach, so the same thing should be true by Besaram. That Besaram is talking about Meiser and Karban Pesach, and what does the pasuk say? Uvesaram Yelach, that the meat goes to the Kohen, but that's not true. If it's Demuki Lab and Meiser Pesach does not go. The meat does not go to the Kohen. The meat is Bailam Achlilahu. It's the owners that eat the meat of the Karban Pesach. It's the owners that eat the meat of the Meiser Behema. So Mayu V'Saram Yelach. So what's the plural over there? According to Rabbi Yossi Haglili, what does it mean V'Saram Yelach? And the Gemara answers to that. The reason why it's in plural is Echad Tam V'Echad Bal Mum. It refers to both a tam and an animal with a blemish. And Rashi explains, B'Shalom Rabbi Yishmael, it makes sense according to Rabbi Yishmael, Demapik Matan Pesach Midam Zvachacha Yishafech. Again, he learns the application of the blood of Karban Pesach from Dam Zvachacha Yishafech. V'hai Lashon Rabim, the Domam V'Chelbam, and the plural of Domam and Chelbam, Kulei Bebechor Mukila. It's all really talking about Bechor, Uveshor, V'Kesev, V'Yez, Hudanaka Lashon Ram, various kinds of animals, so we have a plural over there. V'hai Nami Dekoi Lashon Ram, Devesarim Yelach, and that's the same as the plural in Besarim. The Samachle, which is nearby, Bechor Shor, or Bechor Kesev, or Bechor Eiz. It's going on the firstborn ox, the firstborn sheep, the firstborn goat. El Rabbi Yossi Haglili, but according to Rabbi Yossi Haglili, the Islay Bechor Lashon Yachid, he says it's all really singular. Ukrad and Nokat Lashon Rabim, and the only reason the pasuk has it in plural is Mishom Meiser Pesach and Nokat Law. That's to include Meiser and Pesach. Umeiser Pesach Pshita Lon Sheina Matana LeKohen Ela Bailam Achlile. When it comes to Meiser and Pesach, it's obvious you don't gift that to the Kohen. That's eaten by the owners. So Mayu V'Sarim the Kamal Rachman Liaron. Why does it say and their meat that it's being given over to Aaron, it's given to the Kohanim. Umeshani, and the answer is echad tam v'echad ba'al mum. The plural over there refers to animals that are tam, that don't have a blemish, and also animals that are ba'al mum, that have a blemish. Kolomar means to say, liolam ravim denokat kro kamo lav amini de bechoros koi. Again, the plural in the beginning of the pasuk is not going on bechor. Tekulam b'lashon chad bechor mapek lu. The pasuk is written in language of singular, referring to one bechor. V'domam v'chelbam l'ravos ma'isru pesach. And the word domam and chelbam, which are plural, are really including ma'isru and pesach. V'lashon rabim de besarim ha-bechor kai. But the besarim, that plural, is going on bechor. V'lo hashloshas mine bechor dekra. It's not going on the three different kinds of firstborn animals, the different animals like sheep, goat, and ox. Tetema de chelbam v'domam nami olayu kai, because then the words chelbam and domam also would refer to that. Ela abechor dechad mino nami shayach lememor uvesarim. Again, even with one bechor, you can talk about uvesarim, because the idea is atam uval mum. We're going on an animal that doesn't have a blemish, and also on an animal that does have a blemish. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Lamed Zayin Amid Beis.